Technology has come a long way, but is it possible it holds more power over us than we realize?
For me personally, I feel like a life without phones would be very dull because of the fact that we are in a pandemic and I don't really get to see my friends as often as I would if we were in school. My phone is really my main source of communication with all of my close friends. Like I'm constantly on FaceTime with them, texting them, sending them different videos that I find funny and stuff like that. And my phone is really the main way that I get those messages across to those people. So when you say how would I imagine life without phones, I would just imagine it as being very lonely, being very reserved. There have been a lot of depression and suicide rates drawn into the overuse of phones. And it's like I said before, everything has a climax, right? So, water is really good for you, but an influx of water is gonna do damage, you know what I mean? So it's the same thing with your phone. Like your phone is only as good as you use it. There is such thing as an overuse of your phone. And too much screen time, too much consumption of that technology, it can be bad for you. It can be as little as, I'm not getting this assignment done tonight because I spent too much time on my phone, or it can be something more severe as like I'm literally getting depression, I'm being suicidal, etc., etc.
If you're using your phone all the time to make phone calls, well, then that's actually great in this day and age because we're all supposed to be quarantined and not interacting with people, and humans need social interaction, right? If you're using your phone to be on social media all day, then there's a whole host of potential negative effects, right, that it can have on a person. And especially the obsession now with being liked, right? Or having people follow you, or having a certain amount of views on TikTok or a certain amount of likes on Instagram. There's this competition that young people have within themselves that results from social peer pressure that encourages them to use their phones a lot on social media. So there could be negative effects that way, in a kid's self-esteem, in a kid's kind of a warped idea of what is real and what is not real, and what matters and what doesn't matter.
You see models on Instagram, you see different people on Instagram, and through social media is where people are really able to convey the part of themselves that they want everyone else to see. So when you look at someone constantly being happy on their social media, constantly being fair, maintaining a healthy lifestyle, it makes you second guess the way you view your own lifestyle and your own life choices. I can understand why for others they would see it in that way, and also how it shapes societal standards and creates stereotypes.
How you see the world, well, this is talked about all the times in terms of for example, the algorithms that people have on their social media, that if you have a particular belief system and that's what you often search for in your social media, then you are only fed the same information from that perspective that you already have, and so you're not exposed to other perspectives, and you're not exposed to other things in the world. Social media is filled with all types of things, and social media has people interacting with one another from literally every corner of the world. But if you're not actively looking for that, then that's not going to show up for you in your social media. So then you still have a very skewed perception of the world. People also think that they know other people just because they follow them on social media. And that could be true, right? A person could be 100% open about and real about who they are, but that could also be very false, right? That the person you don't actually know the person just because you know them on social media.
Okay, if I were to take a guess, I'd say I use my phone anywhere between 2 and 5 hours per day.
This isn't unusual for phone users, and that is the problem. A phone, and social media especially, is an addiction. An addiction that nobody truly knows the extent of until they feel the dramatic effects.
Having a phone makes things a lot easier, a lot more accessible, even though there's other ways of accessing it. And not to say that that's a bad thing, but sometimes it's an overuse and an abuse of our cell phones, and an overuse and abuse of that can become an unhealthy lifestyle to maintain.
Growing up, we didn't have phones. We had those the old-fashioned vintage rotary dial phones that were they were mounted on the walls. And what I never forget is that my mom used to buy this little lock, and she put it in the little rotary numbers so we couldn't dial. So we weren't allowed to use phones at all. The phones was there for an emergency. When she was home, she took it out, and when she was home, we never could access the phone. Back then, you didn't call people to chat. You called because it was a necessity.
But I do say that it is necessary because we're living in an age of technology, and at the end of the day, like, if you don't have a cell phone, you don't have a means of technology, especially in this point in time where we are in a virtual setting. You're going to kind of fall behind. You're not going to have the same resources that you need to really go about your daily life. I think that my phone negatively affects my life because I'm a very big procrastinator. I will not do anything that I have to do until the very last second, until I absolutely have to. And a lot of that is because a lot of that time is spent on my phone. You know, I'm going on TikTok, I'm looking at different videos, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Netflix. It consumes my sleep as well, because once I finish everything that I have to do, I'm laying in bed. It's already 2 o'clock. And I'm like, I'll just go on TikTok for a little bit. And before I know it, it's around like 5 o'clock, and I haven't slept. And it's very hard to manage your time because it's literally an addiction to like just keep scrolling. Oh, let me lurk on this person's page. What did they post? What did their friend post? What did their friends of their friends of their friends post? So it's very easy to get lost in like a black hole and to just like sink very deep into the internet. And once you start with that lurking process, it's very hard to kind of escape it.
There has been a lot of complaints from a lot of different people, honestly, myself included, about how much time we're spending on a screen, right in front of a screen, and how much that's straining not only our eyes, but also like sitting down, literally, and not just our backs, but like the lack of activity, right? Like the lack of movement, the lack of moving around, and how that's also affected our bodies. People definitely do not realize how long they spend and how much time they are wasting.
Time. What a complex concept. Minutes, a couple hours we think we spend on our phone when really, it's tens of years of our lives we will never get back. Life only comes once, and time doesn't stop for anyone.
I think we use the cell phones for everything. I mean, we're having dinner, people are on their cell phones, so you're not interacting with families at that time. You're visiting a family member, and everybody's sitting in the living room, and everybody's looking at their cell phone. So in that case, I feel that phones are negative in that sense because it takes away family time.
I think people have been obsessed with their phones. And so, manipulated by their phones and what's on their phones before. But I think it's so super amplified now because that is the main way people are interacting with, with one another or keeping in contact with one another.
I think it's disrespectful when somebody's, you're out to dinner and somebody's with the phone. You feel like you're not with that person on there. And I do realize that, cell phones are important, but, to an extreme. And there should be limits. It's important because this way family can interact a little more. I miss that.
I think it would be better to actually physically interact with people and not just interact with people on the phone, because it's not the same, right? Like, it's something that we're doing right now temporarily a lot because of the circumstance, but it's definitely not the same, especially for people who really need or feel like they need like physical touch, right? And physical affection from people.
I don't think that anyone needs their phone to be happy. I feel like at the end of the day, if it's reliant on like technology, then I feel like it's not necessarily happiness. And when you think about it, like for my reasons that I stated earlier, like I use it as a form of communication. But at the end of the day, I still value the in-person connection, the face-to-face interaction that I have with other people. I value that more than the relationships that I've created online with that person, because that face-to-face interaction, you know, it's emotional, it's real, it's a bond, and that same bond cannot be conveyed like through your phone. So can it provide happiness? I mean, I personally don't think so, because I think that everything that is on your phone can be better if you take it up, like, you know, face to face or like in person in the real world. I depend on my phone to be my comfort, just because my phone is like, I play a lot of music on my phone, and I feel like when I want to be isolated, or I want some time to myself, that's really what I just do. When I used to be in school and I was having an off day, you know, I'd use my phone as my method of like coping.
People rely on their phones for comfort because it's safe, right? Like it's a lot safer. You are much less likely to be rejected. You're much less likely to be confronted if you are on your phone, right? Like, because even if you are confronted or rejected on your phone, you can live in denial about it, and you could take the time to respond to it too, right? Like when you're on the phone, you could, or when you're texting or messaging or whatever, you can think through your answers before you send them. In general, people need to be taught that it's okay for you to sit in your emotions, and that it is normal. And I hate that word, but just for the sake of this conversation, I think that it is extremely normal for you to feel a whole range of emotions for whatever reason throughout your life, and that like it's okay to like sit in it, and like whether they're negative or positive emotions, just actually like acknowledging the emotions that you have, being able to name those emotions. Not everybody has the ability to do that because they weren't necessarily taught, and they don't have the language for it, right? Like some people don't actually know the words to describe some of the things that they're feeling. And so then it's easier for you to just escape, and safer for you to just escape and get on your phone.
Isn't it interesting? In our moments of vulnerability, our moments of real and genuine social opportunity, we resort to a piece of technology. We feel afraid to feel emotions like awkwardness, discomfort, and loneliness. So we compensate with a home button and an infinite scroll, rather than work towards overcoming what we see as our weaknesses. We ignore what makes us human to feel safer, but that is just a false reality we create for ourselves, a reality that when too caught up in, could damage rather than save us.
People in my generation are like, well, we used to play outside, and that helped us build so many skills. It helped us build confidence. It helped us understand, like you fall down, you get back up, how to, face mean people, and how to make friends with people who don't look like you. Kids are growing up and not getting the same kinds of growth that other kids did because they're not physically interacting with kids, and they're overusing technology. I don't really know if anybody could say what the effects are going to be in the future, right? Like I think a lot of people could predict and say, oh, it's going to be really bad, and everyone's going to be really socially awkward, and people are going to be in their silos and blah, blah, blah. But we don't actually know, because there are so many things that could happen between now and them growing up that might not be the case, People do have the ability to adapt really quickly. Like that's one of the most amazing things about being human, is our ability to adapt and be flexible, even when we don't perceive ourselves to be adaptable or flexible.
Don't be on your cell phone throughout the whole day. They are missing out in a lot because you're so busy just looking at a cell phone and not really doing nothing in the outside world.
Being realistic, I think, is one way you could decrease the amount of time that you spend on the phone / on social media, and also being present in the moment. Like when you are physically with someone, like putting your phone away, literally out of sight, hopefully out of mind. And I think that could, manifest itself in different ways, whether you make the agreement with the people you're with, like, hey, let's all put our phones away. Like sometimes my siblings do that and force me to put my phone away too. So
There's a chance for us and those after us, after all.